Do you want to start a business, but there are people in your life who are telling you that you can't? Or maybe it's not other people, maybe it's you. You have this desire, this deep desire to start a business or maybe a ministry or nonprofit, but you just don't believe that you can. Well, all of that stops today because I'm going to tell you why God's opinion is the one that you should be listening to and why his voice is the one that you should allow into your ear. And you can absolutely start a business if you want to and you believe that God is calling you to do that. So, good morning. Hello. Welcome to Morning Coffee with Joyce. I'm Joyce Avrils of herrichlife.com, and I host this show to give you the tips and strategies you need to live a purpose-aligned life. So let's dive into this whole idea of starting a business. You want to ignore the opinions of other people so that you can go ahead and start your business, and you want to be confident in yourself that you can grow and start and grow a business on your own. And maybe it's a ministry or even a nonprofit that you believe that God is calling you to start. Well, this is what I want you to know. When God calls you to do something, he's going to equip you with everything you need to live out that calling. And I do believe that entrepreneurship is a calling. And when you're a Christian, as we know, our calling comes from God. And so don't take your desire to start a business lightly. It's time to start thinking about your destiny and your legacy. And remember this, God's opinion is the only one that really counts. Now, that does not mean that, you ignore what everybody around you is saying, but you have to be very careful and very prayerful about who you allow to in your mind and in your thoughts and who influences your actions. Don't let people who've never done what you believe God is calling you to do talk to you about what you should and shouldn't do. Because there are two things that you need to remember. First of all, when God gives you a calling, he doesn't go and tell everybody else, this is what, for instance, I'm calling Joyce to do. He doesn't work that way. He talks to you, and he believes that you're the one who will share with the people that you need to share with. And the second thing is that you cannot tell everybody your dreams. There's a saying that everybody doesn't deserve a front row seat in your life. Is very true. Everybody does not. You cannot share everything that the Lord is telling you with other people. If you think about the story in the Old Testament about the mother who was had only a little bit of oil left and a little piece of bread, and she was getting ready for her and her son to eat that, and then they were going to die. Well, when the man of God came to her and told her, no, listen, I want you to go and gather your pots, fill them all, bring them all, and we're going to fill them all with oil. She didn't run and tell her neighbors next door, the prophet of God has spoken to me and this is what he's telling me to do. No, she didn't. She kept that to herself. Now, there are times in the New Testament where we see Jesus, telling people, yes, it's fine, go tell people what I've done for you. But there are other times that you have to keep that to yourself. And you have to use wisdom and understanding in order to decide when you should share what the Lord is sharing with you. So don't let people talk you out of your calling. And, we recite Philippians 4:13 all the time, which says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But do you really believe that? Because if you believe strongly enough that you can do everything you're called to do with Jesus's help, there's nothing and no one who should be able to hold you back from doing those things. So when people tell you that you can't do something, whether it's starting a business or whether it's doing anything else, you can say, you know what? Maybe I can't do it on my own. But I don't have to, because with Jesus, I can do everything because he's the one who's giving me strength. And if God is calling me to do this thing, whatever this thing is, I know that together we can get it done. So don't allow doubters to kill your dream. Sometimes they don't even know that they're doing that. Other times they know exactly what they're doing. But it's up to you to how you're going to decide how you're going to react to what people are saying in your life. I remember years ago when the Lord was calling me, I was still working then, and the Lord was calling me to start this online ministry. Now, I've shared before how I didn't have a clue what that meant or what that meant to do. I went to school to be a lawyer. I know nothing about technology. I knew nothing about being online or any of those kinds of things, but I just had this strong calling and desire to do this. And so I shared with him that, I'm finally going to do this thing that I believe that God is calling me to do. And the first words out of his mouth were, well, you wouldn't be any good at that. Now, everything in me just rose up when he said those words. And I could have, at that point, I had two choices. I could have believed what he said and not done anything, or I could have chosen to say, well, you know what? I'm going to show you just how good I can be at it. And if you've been around me, or if you've been on these lives, you've read my posts and whatnot, you probably know which one I chose. I chose to show him what I could do, and God was faithful. Even though I was still working, I was able to start that ministry, and I did everything that God called me to do. And that ministry was everything that he said it would be during that season of my life. And so God is no respecter of persons. If he can do that for me, he can do it for you. You just need to take that desire to him, because like me, you have choices. You can either believe others people's doubts, or you can get stuck in, doubting your own capabilities, or you can believe that what God is calling you to do, he's going to order your steps to do it. He's going to provide what you need to do it. He's going to open the opportunities for you to do it. And all you need to understand is that one yes from God is greater than 100 no's from anybody else. That's all you need to do. And I have two Bible stories, I think, that can help me explain this even better. First of all, remember David and Goliath. Goliath the giant had been taunting the Israelites for 40 days. Who's going to come fight me? Who's going to do it? And all of them were afraid. King Saul was there, and David's brothers were there, and all these other Israelites were there, and they were all afraid of this man. So David goes to take food for his brothers, and he sees this giant, and he hears him taunting his people. And he says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine who challenges the army of the living God? And so something rose up in David. And he said, oh, no, this will not do. I will fight him. And, King Saul doubted him. And I'm sure his brothers weren't too pleased about it either, because when he showed up with his food, the brothers were like, what are you doing here? You have no business being here. Go back to your sheep. But David knew why he needed to be there. And you know how the story ends. He takes a slingshot and a stone, and he kills Goliath. Well, there are two things that I want you to know or get from that story. First of all, nobody knew what David was capable of. While he was tending his sheep, David had already killed a lion and a bear. He didn't tell anybody about that. That was something that he did. That was between him and God. He might not have known that God was preparing him for the day that he would stand before a giant, but God knew. And God knew that, and David knew that if God could keep him safe from a lion and a bear, then surely he could keep him safe from this uncircumcised Philistine, this Goliath. And so when you look at your life and you look at the things that you've gone through, it's all preparation for the calling on your life. And if your calling is to start a business, that's still preparation. Because God gave you the skills, the gifts, the talents, the experiences, everything that you have that makes you you. He's given you those things to fulfill your purpose and your calling, whatever that is. The second thing about the David and Goliath story is that your skills and your gifts and your experiences that you have, your doubters don't even know the capabilities that are in you. They may even minimize what they do know. You might even be minimizing them too, and I want you to stop that if you are. God gave you these things to help you fulfill your purpose and your calling. And if he's calling you to start a business, because he knows with his help, you can get that done. So stop believing people who say that you can't. Stop doubting yourself, because sometimes we can be our own worst enemies. The things that we tell ourselves and the things that we do can totally blind us to what God is calling us to do. And it's not bragging when you know who you are and you know what your gifts and your skills and your talents are. It's not that you're thinking that you're better than anybody else. You simply know who you are in Christ, and you're believing he's going to help you do everything that he's calling you to do. So don't doubt yourself, because you're not going to have to do this alone. If God is calling you to business, he's not expecting you to do this alone, because when you belong to him, he expects you to do nothing alone. He's with you. Jesus is for you, and the Holy Spirit is inside of you. And with the three of them on your side, nobody else can defeat you or defeat them. And speaking of doubting yourself, because sometimes that's even bigger than what the other people are saying. There are plenty of the people in the Bible who had doubts about themselves. David's problem was that other people doubted him, but Gideon's problem was that he doubted himself. If you remember the story of Gideon, he was one of the judges after Joshua in the book of Judges. He was the youngest in a very poor family and the smallest tribe of Israel, the tribe of Manasseh. God called him to deliver Israel from the oppression of the Midianites. If you remember the story, after the death of Joshua, the people forsake the Lord and they started following their own ways, and they started worshiping the idols of their enemies, like the Midianites, for example. And as long as the people worship those idols and worship those gods, God basically said, I wash my hands of you. But they finally got to a point where they were tired of being oppressed, and they were tired of living this lifestyle. And so they cried out to God and said, we're sorry for the sin, and we need your intervention. We need you to help us. And so God sent judges, and one of those judges was Gideon. And during the harvest season, Gideon was in a wine press. Now, you're not supposed to be in a wine press unless you're pressing wine, but he was in a wine press, and he was trying to remove the tears from the wheat that he had harvested. He was afraid. He didn't want the Midianites to see him. So here he was hiding in this place he didn't need to be, trying to separate this wheat from the tears. As he was threshing this wheat, an angel of the Lord appeared to him and told him that God had called him to go and fight against the Midianites. Gideon couldn't believe what he was hearing. Remember, he was weak, he was timid, he was from the smallest tribe, he was from the poorest tribe. Who was he to, fight against anybody, especially a great army like the Midianites? But he was so afraid that he even asked God for signs and a fleece. And after going through all of that, God confirmed, yes, you're the one I want to go. And remember the rest of the story. Once Gideon decided, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this thing that you call me to do, he thought he was going to take, a big army to go against the Midianites. But God said, no, you can only have 300 men. That's it. And there, that's a point to show you that God does not expect you to do things alone, because there's no way that Gideon could have defeated, an army of the Midianites with 300 men unless God was there to help him do it. And so, as we know, Gideon did, in fact, defeat this army. And so there are two things from this story as well that I want to point out. Number one, as I said before, God is not a respecter of person. He can call anyone. He can use anyone. Gideon was the weakest man from a weak family of the smallest tribe in Israel. But God chose him to defeat an army of thousands with just 300 men. Good morning, Artina. Glad to have you here. And so, what God did for Gideon, what God did for me, God can do for you too. You just need to trust him and to believe him and to partner with him to do it. Number two, God doesn't depend on numbers or the strength of other people. In fact, he doesn't depend on other people at all. All he needs are faithful people who are ready to be used by him. If God is calling you to start a business, he wants you to say yes. Because, of course, you're going to pray about it, and you're going to ask him for his guidance, and you're going to ask him for wisdom. But the first thing that you have to do is be a willing vessel. I believe it was a couple of years ago, I did a series called The Year of Yes, Lord. And I talked about what happens, the miracles that happens in our lives when we finally say yes to God. Whatever he's calling you to do, it may not even be starting a business. It might be something else. But when he calls us and we know within our spirit that that's him speaking, that's him talking to us, when we say yes, he can use us to do the extraordinary. And so that's how it is with this business. Think about saying yes and asking the Lord, what does this look like? What are the steps that you want me to take? And I have some homework for you, so I'm going to give you some more information about that in a minute. But there are plenty of people, not only in the Bible, but people in our world right now who believed in their ideas and believed in their dreams. Some are Christians and some are not. The point is that they didn't start out being the household names that we know them as now, but they said yes. They said yes to themselves. They said yes to their dreams. They said yes to their calling. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. If you know her story, she was selling copying machines. I think it was copying machines. It was either copying machines or fax machines. She was selling one of them. And she knew that, this can't be my life. There has to be something bigger for me. She was making good money, but it wasn't about the money. She was lacking some fulfillment in her life. And so everything changed for her one day when she put on a pair of white pants and she looked at how the pants fit, and it like, you know what? There's some bulges here and I see some cellulite and I just don't like the way this looks. So she had this idea. I'm going to take a pair of pantyhose and I'm going to cut off the bottoms and I'm going to wear just the top part. And that's what she did. And that's how Spanx was born. Now she is a self-made billionaire, not millionaire, self-made billionaire, because she had the idea to cut off some bottoms from a pair of pantyhose. Now, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, one of the richest men on the planet, when he told his boss that he was going to start a business selling books online, his boss laughed at him. He told him, that's crazy. You're going to go broke. That's never going to work. But we know what happened. He started Amazon in his garage. And he ended up putting Blockbuster Videos out of business. And now everybody knows who he is. All right, then there's Jamie Kern Lima. If you don't know Jamie, she was the founder, or is the founder of IT Cosmetics. And Jamie tells the story of how she was a waitress at Denny's, but she believed that God had something bigger for her. And so she developed a makeup line because she had a skin problem while she was an anchor working on a news program. She had this really bad case of rosacea. If you know rosacea, it just made her cheeks and her the top of her, her cheeks, and I believe it was her forehead was covered in these red, really bad looking marks, and it was affecting her job performance. And so she had to come up with a solution, and she did. She came up with a makeup line. And as we know, Jamie went on to be on QVC, and that's when her business exploded. And she tells, if you ever want to read her book, I believe it's called Believe or Believe It by Jamie Kern Lima. It's a really great story because she talks about how she and her husband, they're Christians, they're believers, how they were at the brink of bankruptcy when they got on QVC, and it just changed everything for her. In 2016, Jamie was able to sell her company to L'Oreal Cosmetics for $1.2 billion. Of that $1.2 billion, she was able to pocket $410 million. All because she prayed and asked God, what could she do about this rosacea that she had? And he gave her the tools and the means and opened up the opportunities and doors for her to do it. So who's to say that God's plans for you aren't this big? Or even if they're just a tiny bit this big, are you willing to trust God enough to find out? That's the thing. Can you believe in yourself enough to take the first step of getting that business started? Because whatever God calls you to do, he wants you to partner with him so that together the both of you can get it done. If you need more encouragement, I want you to read the entire story of David and Goliath in 1 Samuel 17 and the story of Gideon in Judges 6. And like I said before, I have some homework for you. If God is calling you to start a business, or if he's calling you to start something else, it could be a nonprofit or a ministry, same principles apply here. I want you to get out a journal, a tablet or a notebook, and write out everything that God is telling you about this business. Pray and ask him. After you've done that, you've written out everything. Pray and ask him how he wants you to start. What's the next thing he wants you to do? And then I want you to organize each item into an action step. I'm big on action. And every time I do a how-to, or I tell you how to, how to do something, overcome something, get started with something, there's always, the last step is always an action plan. And you need somewhere to start. And so whatever God is telling you, that's going to be your action plan. That's going to be your action steps. You just need to find out how he wants you to get started. And so I believe in taking pen to paper, but I know some people like to type. But when you get everything out of your head and onto something that you can see, it becomes more real. It becomes more concrete. And amazingly enough, sometimes the doubts that you have, they also lessen or they go away because now you have a plan. You can see where to go and how to do this thing. And so that's your homework to do that. And after you've done that, after you have your plan, this is what else I want you to do. I want you to DM me at Joyce Averils, and I'm going to send you a link to my calendar, and we're going to have a 10-minute business clarity call. And during that call, I'm going to talk to you about your very best first step or your very best next step. This is not a sales call, so please don't be afraid to call me, to DM me, because I'm not going to try to sell you anything. That's not what we're going to do. This is simply a gift to you for being a part of my community. And here's the other thing. I really do believe that business is a calling from God. And I also believe that business, starting your own business, entrepreneurship is the number one way to build wealth if you're a woman, if you're a woman of color, and especially if you're a Black woman. So if God is calling you to start a business, please know that this isn't just about you. This is about affecting your legacy. It's about living your destiny. It's about creating wealth for those that you care about and who matter to you most. So it's very important for you to be clear about what he's calling you to do. And so that's why I'm telling you, if you need help, DM me. We'll set up a 10-minute call, and we're going to talk about your best first step or your best next step. I used to be a business coach, and so I know what I'm talking about. I can help you with this. And so if you need the help, I'm going to send you a link to my calendar, and we're going to get you started. Before I say goodbye to you today, I do want to invite you to my brand new life class I'm hosting next week, next Thursday. I'm really excited about it. It's called Press into God, How to Strengthen Your Connection with God. If you want a closer connection with the Lord, if you want a better prayer life, if you want to have better Bible study time, this class is going to teach you how to do that. And so it's free, but you do need to register because I'm doing the class on Zoom, and you'll need the Zoom information. And also I have an action guide for you that you're going to use while we're in the life class, but you're also going to use after the life class is over. And I want to get that to you. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is through email. So that's why you need to register. But go ahead and register for that. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the class. And if you're unable to be there live, that's okay, because I will send out a replay to everyone who does register. So that is all for, I didn't tell you where to register. It's at herrichlife.com/press. herrichlife.com/press. Just go there and you can sign up for the free class. So thank you for joining me today. Those of you who are here live, those who will be watching on the replay, I appreciate you all so much. But have a great weekend. That is all I have for this week. But I'll see you again next week, same place, same time. Bye for now.